Hello and welcome to another quick tip. Now, the last video I did, I talked a little bit about varnishes and how they can sometimes go a bit wrong. Frosting is what it normally gets called, and you'll see it sometimes when a miniature is spray varnished in particular. You'll get this very fine sort of white surface, a little bit powdery. Now, I thought it might be useful to show that this is something you can actually quite easily fix. Now, I've got here a Stormcast Eternal, and I sprayed him with the Army Painter spray. Now I just want to point out this isn't a product review. I'm not saying you shouldn't use the anti-shine. I'm just pointing it out because this is what I used. I deliberately sprayed it in the worst possible conditions. It was hot, it was humid, and it's still quite humid. That's really why we're just doing this one quickly. But what you might see, not so much on the front because I can't really predict how frosty this was going to go, but if we look at the back, this Stormcast is not the glossy gold that I painted, and you'll see it's quite dull on the shoulder pad there as well. It looks almost orange. Same too, there's a little bit of that proper frostiness on the gauntlet there, but I figured, since I can't plan for how bad this will go, you might have a little difficulty seeing how this turns out too. Now this merits a real quick physics lesson, just to talk about what can cause frosting. Generally speaking, when you are putting stuff on a miniature, if we're spraying something onto our figures, we are shooting little particles of what we want to stick to it onto the thing. And everything going well, it will adhere in a nice smooth surface, and that's where we get that normal slight sort of sheen to our varnishes. Now, in the event that this doesn't happen properly, and this is why heat and humidity is such a big problem, because if you're spraying when it's hot, you're going to have some of those little particles and the binding agent dry before they hit the surface. Then you're spraying what is essentially sand under a varnish. Or if it's humid, it's going to hit water droplets or water vapor and hit the model, and the same thing is going to happen. Then instead of the light hitting our miniature and everything working properly and being nice, it's essentially trying to go through a crystal surface almost. All these little bitty bits of clear varnish that aren't working properly. So this is where our gloss varnish comes in. Now a good comparison for this is, imagine if you were to smooth over a concrete wall with some plaster, which you can then paint over, and life is good. It's kind of the similar principle we're going for with the yard coat. Now you can use any gloss varnish. Gloss works the best simply because of how it sort of lacquers a surface. So this is going to help fill in all of the little bits that have gone awry. Let's give it a shot. Now, as with most paints, you want to thin this down with just a little bit of water. It doesn't need to be thinned down to milky consistency or any of that normal stuff we talk about, but you do want it to flow and you don't want it to collect and be really kludgy. So if I get this light, there we go. I've got some of that on my brush, and you'll see as it goes on, you get that faint sort of bluey gluiness in some of that surface. But all I'm doing is just covering over. We'll do the whole model with this gloss varnish, and we'll let that dry and see what he looks like by comparison. So here's what we start with, and let's go ahead, see what he looks like once he's been glossed. And then for comparison, there he is once he's had a gloss over the top. Now, I actually quite like the Stormcast with the gloss finish, so personally I would normally leave that there. But if you're painting something like, Imperial Guard or something to that effect, then you're going to want to give them a coat of probably a matte or a satin varnish. After doing the gloss stuff, you can spray over the top of it again. If you do, I recommend you leave it a full 12 hours to really cure properly. But with this being dry enough to paint over, what I'm going to do is grab myself my Vallejo acrylic matte stuff, and let's try some of that over the top. So here we're going to follow exactly the same procedure. A little bit of water, a little bit of varnish, and just brush it over the top. Now you'll notice this Vallejo stuff tends to collect blue in the recesses fairly quickly. Don't worry too much about that. but don't let a huge amount of it collect. All right, about that much is going to be fine when it dries. So let's quickly go around and we'll see what he looks like when he's finished again. Now with our matte varnish over the top, this is what we've got. And, you know, he's not too bad actually. It's not going to be as perfect as if it had all just gone right in the first place. But then, you know, what recovery ever is. But the point of this being more the fact that, you know, if you've just finished something and you really want to play games with it, you don't want to have to strip it and start over, or, you know, you don't happen to be entering a painting competition with it, then why not? Slap on some gloss varnish and then a little matte of your choosing, and you're good to go. So hopefully, guys, something there was useful to you, and, you know, you'll find it can actually help quite a bit if you have any of these little disasters happen to you. And as ever, thank you very much for your time. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.